Hello and welcome to my channel, Rambleon ASMR. When I named the channel this, it was for two reasons. One, I love Led Zeppelin and the song Ramble On. And two, I do in fact love to ramble on. So normally this is in the form of me reading books and short stories by authors that I have hyperfixated on, or books that I've hyperfixated on, things like that. But I have a lot of interests in things over the years that have just been obsessions to me. And I don't have a captive audience. I don't have kids or anything to be like, listen here, let me tell you. And when I listen to ASMR, sometimes I just want layered sounds and things like that. But sometimes I want information. I like to listen to people actually telling me something. Maybe I want to learn something as I drift off. So today I found notes from an abandoned podcast idea. I hyperfixate still. One of my favorite movies is the Blair Witch Project. And I have just collected over the years so much information about it. I love the Blair Witch Project. I know that it's kind of been a movie that people either love or hate, but it came out at the perfect time for me. I had just gotten the internet when they started doing the first, viral campaigning. And I was 8 years old, so I totally believed it. It totally freaked me out. And I just feel like it's kind of a core memory at this point, but I've never stopped loving the Blair Witch Project. I have all the movies. I have them on VHS, and I still watch them that way. And the old documentaries, like the Blockbuster one, I think one's called Sticks and Stones, and they're just really fun faux documentaries that go along with the movies. I love the sequels and the remake and everything. The book, there's a Rustin Parr book. Maybe I'll read it for you at some point. But today I just want to kind of read over my notes that I've collected. These are years old now. But just to get started, a rundown of the movie. Sorry for any thumps and bumps and purrs and things like that. My cats are very active at the moment. But in October 1994, 3 student filmmakers disappeared in the woods near Burkittsville, Maryland, while shooting a documentary. A year later, their footage was found. Heather and Josh seemed to know each other, and Mike was maybe just someone they needed to help with sound and filming, but Josh knows them. They traveled to Maryland and shoot the opening at the cemetery. 20 families settled there, and there are a strange number of child graves. Lots of children have been killed or died mysteriously. Heather interviews the townsfolk. A lot of these people were folks that just they grabbed off the street. They're in the documentary as well, which I think is a really interesting part of the movie. My favorites are the woman that said she'd go fishing with her dad. She's the only one that claims to have seen the witch, and she had long black hair, and her body was covered in fur, and her face was all weird and off-looking, was her description of the witch. So they spend the first night in a hotel and check in with families, and they make sure all their equipment is fully functional, they're all good to go, and they prepare to go hiking. The next day, they run into some fishermen who are kind of your standard harbingers. One is more skeptical, but they try to tell them a little bit more about the witch. One describes seeing her materialize as a gray vapor rising out of the water. They park by the side of the road and start hiking toward Coffin Rock. The filming is so realistic here. I just love the style of filmmaking. It's like OG found footage. It's revealed that 5 men's bodies were found. They were bound and murdered by having their intestines ripped out crudely, and unintelligible writing was carved into their faces on Coffin Rock. They were a search party looking for a girl, and then a second search party went out. And when they went back with a search and recovery team, when the people that found the bodies were gone. But they said they could still smell death in the air. So Heather, Mike, and Josh, their first night camping, Josh heard noises like an owl and like a cackling. So they addressed the map, and Heather says they started off the map because she knew where they were going. and they were briefly lost, but they believe they're back on track. Mike and Josh at this point are already skeptical of Heather's leadership, but she insists they're on a shortcut, heading toward a cemetery. I don't think they ever find it, but Mike is already hostile. Josh is trying to keep everyone chill. I freak out when I get lost. I would have very much been acting like Mike. I'd be like, we gotta get out of here. But they come upon 7 creepy rock piles on the ground and in a tree as it gets dark. Heather can't remember what Mary Brown, one of the town residents, had said about the rock piles, something from the Bible. I looked it up and it was Genesis 31:52. I will never pass this pile of stones to harm you, and you must never pass these stones to harm me, signifying that they're past the point of no return. That night, they hear noises all around. They're in their tents and they just hear stuff everywhere. Mike thinks it might be locals messing with them, like Deliverance style. In the morning, they decide to head back to the car. Heather again is insisting they're going the right way. And they keep checking the map and the compass, which seems right to them. But the guys demand to see the map. Mike is losing it. Everything's getting all kerbobbled. They're wandering around in circles at this point. They're just totally lost. And it gets dark, and the guys are saying they have to work tomorrow, and they have to return the equipment. But at this point, it's already dark. It's cold. They set up camp. Heather wakes up in the night hearing sounds again. Something big moving through the woods. And it's all around them. Like, the sounds are totally ricocheting. They can't tell which direction anything's coming from. But they get up in the morning, and their campsite is surrounded by these piles of stones. Again, the piles of stones. Josh is losing it now, telling her to pack up. He's tired and hungry, and he's fucking done. Heather realizes the map is gone. Josh tells her she's irresponsible, and she accepts responsibility, but he accuses her of wanting to stay and film. They kind of keep arguing about, like, I gave you the map, you had the map, but Heather's like, it's fine, I lost the map, sorry. But they decide to follow the creek. Survival tip, following flowing water downstream is, like, probably only just somewhere, Heather says it's very hard to get lost in America. It's even harder to stay lost. Josh says people will definitely know they're missing / lost by tonight. But then Heather finds Mike laughing by the creek, and she thinks, like, he might have the map, that they're, like, playing a joke on her. And Mike admits that he did have the map, but he kicked that map into the creek. He's laughing maniacally, saying the map was useless, and Heather and Josh lose it on him. She screams that if they die out here, it's his fault. She demands he hand over the compass. And later they come upon all the stick people hanging from the trees. Those are like the iconic image, I feel like, of the Blair Witch. The things I remember were the stick people, that one shot of Heather's face, and the teeth in the napkin. Like, that's what I think of off the top of my head when I think of Blair Witch. I think that's, some iconic images. Mike just starts screaming, help us. He's freaking out. Heather admits alone on camera that they're lost and they don't know what to do. So they agree not to light a fire, and at night they hear the sounds of children. They scramble to get the camera going, and the tent is like rustling, and they run out, and Heather is screaming, what the fuck is that? Mike tells them to turn all the lights off, and then back at camp, everything is destroyed. They're like out running around. They get back to camp. Everything is totally destroyed and also covered in slime, which is gross. So the guys are fighting about keeping the camera rolling, and but they get it together and they hike on. And I mean, at this point, you might as well keep the camera rolling to document everything, right? Maybe you're trying to focus on survival, which I also get, also valid. But they realize that the compass has been off, like it's not working correctly, and they're going in circles. Heather breaks down after walking south, quote unquote, all day. Turns out they're just going in a circle. That night they decide to keep watch and shift. They wake up and Josh is missing. All his stuff is still there, but they wait and scream for him, but like thinking maybe he'll wander back, he's just gone off somewhere, but no luck. So Mike and Heather pack up and end up camping another night. More spooky sounds are happening. Like, it sounds like Josh in distress off in the distance. They can't tell where it's coming from or if it's really him. This is just more of the torment at that point. Heather then finds a bundle of sticks right outside the tent. So she opens it and finds like a little packet of blood and hair and teeth, which is what I was talking about. The little, like, everybody was trying to get a good look at that thing at the time. They were like, is that teeth? Are they real? Like, everything about this movie, let me spit it out, was, is this real? The teeth were real. They were donated by a helpful dentist. But I don't think she tells Mike about finding the packet of hair and blood and teeth. So I'd be losing my mind, but I'd keep the teeth. But I don't think I'd even camp. I don't think if it was me, I don't think I'd even camp or consult the compass necessarily. I'd just follow the creek and hope for the best and just keep walking. But anyway, they don't have any supplies left. They were actually provided during filming. They were provided very little food during the shoot, and they were woken up by the crew constantly to be like realistic, like just messing with them. It was a really hellacious shoot, I guess. But Heather films her tearful snot apology and says it's her fault they're out here hungry, cold, and hunted. It's like the other iconic shot. Oh, also Mike by the wall in the corner, in the basement. But that's later. I'm hoping that if you're listening to this, you're quite familiar. Heather films her snot apology, like I said, and she didn't realize that the angle was that bad. And now it's iconic, but like it was in this spoofed in the scary movies. And she says the iconic line, "I'm scared to close my eyes. I'm scared to open them. I'm gonna die out here." I just really love that shot. But they hear Josh again that night, and they come upon an old house in the woods. Mike goes in, and it's all like scary and abandoned, and Heather follows him, but she's like terrified. Mike yells that he hears Josh, and yells I'm going upstairs. All over the stair walls are children's handprints. And then Josh yells, I hear him downstairs. Or Mike, rather. And runs to the basement. There are tons of creepy symbols on the wall, and he drops the camera. You can see, like, POV from the camera for a minute. Heather comes screaming into the basement and sees him in the corner. And she screams and then drops her camera, and that's the end. And that shot of Mike in the corner is, like, super iconic as well, if you're a fan of the movie. And I am. So there were lots of theories about what actually happened. One of them, you know, being that the witch is real, you know, and it's all supernatural and things like that. But there's also a theory that I thought was interesting that Josh and Mike killed Heather, and people have pointed out that it's kind of odd how Mike yells where he's going in the house. Like, he yells, I'm going upstairs, so Josh could have, you know, ran into the basement. Then he yells, I'm going downstairs, and he stands in the corner so Heather would be distracted and Josh could get her from behind. But they're all missing, and there's no real motivation for that. I mean, not that, like, murderers always have the best motivation, but I just thought that was a kind of interesting theory. Of course, I'm in the camp that the witch is real. It's supernatural, because very much I want it to be supernatural. But the Curse of the Blair Witch documentary was a faux doc that they put out I think they put it out ahead of the movie. And I love it. I love that. I watch it more than the movie, really. And I love documentaries, so it's just, like, kind of right up my alley. But it's so well done, and it seems totally like a real documentary. So it just added to the, is it real, is it not real, of the whole thing at the time. But in the Blair Witch doc, or the Curse of the Blair Witch doc, local legend tells of Ellie Kedward, who lived in Blair Township, Maryland in 1785. She was accused of witchcraft and banished in the middle of winter, and allegedly she bled a few children, like, to help with sickness, like bloodletting. So, you know, they're like, she's a witch, but they blindfold her and tied her to a tree and left her there. By the end of winter, her accusers and half of the children of the town had died. The town folks just up and left, fearing the curse. They just hightailed it out of there. So there's like years of curse shenanigans, there's disappearances. Rustin Parr, he claims he was compelled by her, murdered 7 children in 1941. He was a hermit who was said to be the gentlest of souls before being witched, I guess. There's also a book called The Secret Confession of Rustin Parr, and that's the one that I may read at some point, where he reveals it wasn't him that killed. So, the movie was directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, and they wrote a script, but it was mostly improvised with individual directors. They were guiding everyone by GPS, and gradually they deprived the cast of food, sleep, and shelter to make it more fraught, and the acting, I suppose, more believable. Which seems really torturous. I feel like you should maybe just trust your actors, but I also kind of can't argue with the finished product as a massive fan, but probably not the best way to go about it. A lot of people think that this movie was a true story, and this was a huge part of what I think was the genius marketing. There was a website, and the fake but very realistic documentaries. They were released on Sci-Fi and Blockbuster. They're called Curse of the Blair Witch and Sticks and Stones. I prefer Curse of the Blair Witch, but they're both good. IMDb actually listed the 3 unknown actors as missing, presumed dead, and Heather's mother got calls of condolences. To this day, some people aren't convinced if it's fake or real, which I think is really funny because the actors are they're gonna be at Horror Hound this year. Like, they're okay. But at the time, it was just amazing. At the time, people flocked to Burkittsville, and the townspeople have been trying to refute it forever. The sheriff was harassed. There's just so much lore, and sometimes it gets muddy and contradictory, but Blair never existed, but the docs from Sci-Fi and Blockbuster were so convincing. They had fake police in the films, fake historians, fake news segments that looked very convincing, and there were also these missing posters plastered all over the United States of Heather, Mike, and Josh. And there was a website which was wild in 1999, and it still exists. You can view evidence and a timeline of events, and it's just all very convincing, and it's just the first viral marketing. People do it all the time now, and you can't really trust anything on the internet now. Everything, even the most innocuous things, are staged or faked or whatever for any kind of engagement, hopeful engagement, even rage engagement, of course, but this was the first time something like this really was utilizing all these different mediums and medias to sell you this story. So to me, it's not just about the core film at all. I love the Blair Witch, but I love all that it encompasses. I love the movie, of course, but would I love the movie as much without the rich lore surrounding it? Maybe not. But it's just so fun to me. But there were ye old message boards where people were trying to solve it or speculate what happened and tell their own tales of Maryland Woods, which is wild. People were no, literally this happened to me. And I was 8 at the time, so I could get on the website and kind of click around and things like this, but I wasn't engaging with it. I was just, I thought it was real. I was but I remember people, as soon as it hit theaters, people were half of the people were trying to preserve it, I think, and we're it's totally real, and half of the people were it's totally fake, But that's why I love it so much, and that's why I'm so fascinated by it. This was above and beyond at the time. It was the dawn of a new era, kind of how Paranormal Activity in the 2010s, I think, revived the found footage genre. Did that come on in the 2010s? I really like those movies too. They're not, I wouldn't give them 5 stars on Letterboxd, but I do quite enjoy them. but no one knew what to believe. It was like scary but not too scary, which made it perfect for slumber parties and like teens and everyone. The hype was unreal, but then like everyone was so divided about it. Like I said, like, was it real or lame or groundbreaking? It was just, people were really all over the place about how they felt about it. Obviously I wasn't, still am in the camp of totally loved it, but like again, I maybe not the movie itself if you're just judging it based on solely viewing the movie, but once you dig in, to me it's just, I love it so much. If you can't tell. This is also the era where like teen horrors were reviving the horror genre, like, you know, in the 80s, in the early 90s, the slasher genre at that point was like getting stale and everything, and then there was an era of movies in the early 2000s and late 90s that just like totally, I feel like, reinvigorated the genre, and I love when that happens to the horror genre. The lull and then the like really good stuff coming out. But I was watching the Sticks and Stones the other day, the documentary, and my friend Eric was here and asked if it was real. Like, I literally love that. Like, convincing people to this day, like, he didn't know what I was watching, obviously. Like, he wasn't like, this is, you know. But it was so different that the like shiny Hollywood pop music filled movies like we're used to. Ironically, the second one did do the pop music. It's totally a vibe shift. Tonally different. But the Scream movie came out, and I feel like that really did a lot. I love that movie too. Did a lot for the horror genre, and the soundtrack for that does slap. But this was just a departure from what was going on in the mainstream. The cast didn't do any interviews or anything to keep up the charade, and this literally like could not happen now. Like, something would leak, someone would post something and give it all away, but back then, like, the internet was very different and there wasn't social media as we know it. It was viral, like before viral was a thing, the way it is now, certainly. But Heather acted in a few things and then retired and became, I think she became a weed farmer. I don't know what Mike ever did, but Josh acted in all kinds of stuff and wrote and directed some movies. But because of the hype, there was a very rushed sequel called Book of Shadows that came out in 2000, and it is, like I said, nothing like the first. I do still like the sequel, but like I said, I love everything about this cinematic universe, the Blair Witch cinematic universe. The beginning interviews are the best part of the second movie, and I like the goth girl every time. It's pretty much based on the people that flocked to Burkittsville after the Blair Witch, the first movie, came out. This group of Blair Witch enthusiasts is led by a local named Jeff on a tour, and there are grad students there to study mythology and mass hysteria for a book, a Wiccan, and a goth psychic, who is my favorite. They party in the ruins of Rustin Parr's house, and basically all hell breaks loose after that. One gal has a miscarriage, don't witch hunt while pregnant, and she ends up possessed. I think murders happen, like ritualistic orgies, hallucinations, standard stuff, you know. It's trash, but I love it, and it's a great Halloween watch, I think. Like I said, I love Goth Kim, but I also love like Resident Deb. She has this really great quote that says, "I make sure that if I go out to my car, I at least have a full face on and a great nightgown." I always put a full face on, at least eyebrows, and sunscreen if I go anywhere in case I die. But there was also a book series, which I haven't read, about Heather's, I think it's supposed to be Heather's cousin's case files from his research after her disappearance. There's also a video game, which I own, but I couldn't figure out how to play it. So, then in 2016, there was the latest sequel, just called Blair Witch, and it was filmed in secret, and it was originally called The Woods, I think, so that it wouldn't, get out that there was a Blair Witch movie coming down the pipe. It's about Heather's brother, her little brother, thinking he has found evidence that Heather is still alive. So he leads a search for her in the woods again. I liked it. They can't go wrong, with the Blair Witch for me, but I guess they used drones and phones and modern filming equipment. So that's cool to me, like heading into the woods totally prepared with modern technology. But they showed the witch, and people have feelings about that. I'm fine with it, but I do think there's a lot to be said for just doing like creepy shadows, or a glimpse of long black hair, or a quick sudden movement, but then leaving it to the imagination. But I'm not mad at it. But then there was the Scooby-Doo special also. I'm not exactly sure when that aired. I have to assume 1999, but I think it was called the Scooby Project or something like that. And it was these bumps. I think it was during, I'm recalling all this from memory, I think it was from a Halloween block of programming, and it was kind of interstitials, like between shows and commercials. They would show a little bit more of the Scooby-Doo project. It's all on YouTube, and it's a delight, of course. But I just love this piece of media, this, like I said, cinematic universe of media. And I just really wanted to talk about it, and I rewatch it every year, and it's about time for me to start wanting to watch it, because during the summertime, all I want to watch are scary movies that are like in the woods. During the spring, I kind of want to watch like Jane Austen's, stuff like that, Bridgerton. But then, late summer, and in the middle of summer, I like to watch kind of camping horror, just in the woods. And, it's getting warmer and the days are getting longer, and it's really fun. So I like to watch, like the Blair Witch Project, Cabin in the Woods, of course, things like that. I used to love Wrong Turn. I haven't watched that in a long time, but perhaps I should. But then this, like I said, the sequel, Book of Shadows, is more of a like camp, Halloween kind of appropriate romp. It's so strange how this is the rambling part. But it's so strange how there are different, seasons that I like to watch certain movies, and like the weather's got to be right for certain movies, or it rains and you suddenly feel like watching Twilight or something like that. So yeah, this is one that I like to watch in the cry and shame of summer, and also when it gets a little cold, because I have coats on, it gets cold in the movie, but like when it's like warm during the day and then really cold at night as it gets closer to the Burr months, September, October, November, and December. It's just a really great movie, and I hope that someone found this that was trying to go to sleep, that also just really loves the Blair Witch and wanted to hear somebody ramble about it. I could go on and on, but it's been almost 30 minutes, so I hope you've drifted off by now. And I'll see you next time.